Trees are everywhere, it seems. Father Peter John here, coming to you from All Saints Orthodox Church in Bloomington, Indiana. Christ is in our midst. Trees, they're all over the place. There is a little hollow tree behind me. I'm not going to stick my hand in there because one never knows what's going to come out. This story that I'm going to tell today is about a tree that had some serious problems. Sounds funny, I know, just hang on. So, and actually I can't even give you a name for the saint today, the Dendrite that we have today, because he is known only anonymously. His life comes from an ancient manuscript of somebody who was touring the Middle East and making these notes as he went along about all of these people that he encountered. And he was looking for saintly people in particular to get a word from them. Well, there was this story then about this certain hermit, this monk, who was known, he was just anonymous. Nobody knew his name. And he climbed up on top of this cypress tree on a mountaintop in the Middle East. Now, he lived up there, and in order to protect himself, since he was way up in the treetop, I'm sure it swayed in the wind, and who knows, you know, use your imagination a little bit and you can figure out how strange it must have been to live in the top of a tree. But he brought a rope with him and he tied his ankle onto the top of the tree, just in case a big wind came along, or in case he fell asleep and fell out, or some such thing. I think there is a squirrel right behind me. Anyway, so he tied himself to this big cypress tree. And it just so happened that he had a problem, okay? He was under demonic attack. Now, there's a couple of different ways we can look at demonic attack, right? The attack from a demon. We could say it's literal, like there's something happening where there's actually a dark force, a dark entity that is seeking to harm us, right? And sometimes that could be visible or invisible or whatever else. But then there's also, of course, this thing that we would call like under the influence of demonic power. For example, being tempted by a demon to do something, right? Well, in this case, this guy was actually being physically accosted by a demon. It's funny, actually, as I was going through reading about this, there were two different versions of this story. Maybe there are more, but the two different versions, one was this version from the Christian Pilgrim, and then the other was a version that had been read and was being commented on by a scholastic, right? Somebody who was just studying because they found it very interesting. Oh, there are these people living in trees, and they wanted to write a book about it. So, the way that the academic presented this situation was that there was this guy, and he was living in the top of a cypress tree, but he moved into the wrong tree because there was a tree god living in that tree, a pagan tree god. So you can see how these things get mixed up, right? People get confused. Well, anyway, he's up there. This dear anonymous man is up there battling his passions in the top of this tree. And this demon comes along every day and pushes him out of the tree. And he goes swinging around. He's tied on by his ankle, thank God. But he's suspended upside down. So the people who live in the village near, on this mountainside, they come along and they see this guy hanging upside down. They got to come and they got to, get him down and help him dust him off. Are you okay? I'm okay. I'm not done with him yet. He climbs back up the tree, ties his ankle, gets back up in that tree and starts praying again. This happens day after day after day after day. Feeling discouraged yet? I think I would. I'm getting knocked out of a tree by a demon. And then humiliating myself in front of all of the village people. So this guy then, the villagers start to get a little bit annoyed because they keep having to get this guy down from the tree so that he can get back up in the tree and start all over again. Well, what happens is interesting. Eventually this guy becomes experienced enough and strong enough, probably spiritually and physically, that when he gets knocked out of the tree, that he can pull himself back up, climb back up, right? Get back up that tree, up back onto the top and do his little perch up there. And after that, the demon becomes so discouraged once he realizes that this anonymous monk is able to overcome him with prayer and with spiritual strength, and presumably some physical strength too, that the demon becomes so discouraged that he eventually just leaves and leaves him alone. So there's a great spiritual teaching in all of this for us, of course. This idea that, probably most of us aren't ever going to live in a tree. I mean, I had some really nice tree houses as a kid. I will be totally honest with you. I loved tree houses. I built tree houses that could have been in magazines. That's not true. But my childhood me thinks that's probably true. I love tree houses, right? But I didn't live in a tree house. Most of us are just not going to work out our salvation in a tree. But if we look at the example of this anonymous Middle Eastern monk, what we see is tenacity, perseverance, right? The will to strive on, the will not to give up, to rely on Christ. In the monastery, a famous saying is that once somebody came to an old monk in a monastery and said, "What do you do in the monastery all day?" And the old monk said, "We fall down and we get up. And we fall down and we get up. And we fall down and we get up." And so this monk living in this tree today shows us that concept in action, right? He shows us, no matter how many times you get knocked down, in the name of Christ, get back up, get back to work. Because Christ is the victorious one. Jesus Christos Nika, the victor. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God. Christ is in our midst. He is and ever shall be.